Welcome to the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Podcast. I'm Kate Moore-Youssef, and I'm a wellbeing and lifestyle coach, EFT practitioner, mum to 4 kids, and passionate about helping more women to understand and accept their amazing ADHD brains. After speaking to many women just like me, and probably you, I know there is a need for more health and lifestyle support for women newly diagnosed with ADHD. In these conversations, you'll learn from insightful guests, hear new findings, and discover powerful perspectives and lifestyle tools to enable you to live your most fulfilled, calm, and purposeful life wherever you are on your ADHD journey. Here's today's episode. Today, we're talking about something very cool, very exciting. We're talking about ADHD and dating. And I have with me Mo Ari Brown here from the States. But what we're going to be talking about specifically is using the apps and understanding the challenges and how we can make this whole field a little bit more neurodivergent friendly. So let me introduce Mo. Now, Mo is Hinge's love and connection expert and a licensed marriage and family therapist. They also serve as a diversity and equity consultant and on the board of directors for It Gets Better Project, a non-profit organisation dedicated to uplifting and connecting LGBTQIA plus youth around the globe. I was going to say the world, but the globe, we can deal with both. Mo, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I am, like I said, this is like a conversation that we've not really properly had on the podcast before. So when I got an email from Hinge asking, would you like to talk about, neurodivergent dating? I was like, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And the funniest thing is, I said to your colleague in the email, is that my nickname in our family is Anti-Hinge, because I have all these gorgeous, amazing older nieces, and they're all in their 20s, and I'm always trying to help them, find love and matchmake and all of this. And so They have kind of just got a bit sick of me, and I'm now just anti-Hinge because I'm always sending them, do you know this guy? Do you know this person? So it's just funny. So as soon as I got the email from Hinge, I was like, I have to do it. I have to talk about it. So yeah. And like I said, I've been married for over 21 years. So me and online dating, this is like new territory. I'm really excited to dive in. I've spoken to my community. I speak to my clients. I understand what's going on. But from a personal perspective, I've not lived, this new era of online dating. So perhaps we can just dive in and maybe tell me a little bit about, I guess, what the challenges are for people, neurodivergent people who are finding themselves in this new kind of era where finding love is all online and through the apps.
So right off the top of my head, what's coming to mind is that we have the honor of having a research team at Hinge. They are our Hinge Labs team. They conducted a study that we just put out called the Love and ADHD Date Report, and that stands for Data, Advice, Trends, and Expertise. In this report, we found that daters with ADHD are 22% more likely than daters without ADHD to find, social communication overwhelming and dating online overwhelming. And so that says a lot that they're daters with ADHD, that there are significant challenges happening around communication, making matches. And I think as we go deeper into the report, and I encourage anybody to look at it, we really are looking at two main challenges. There are some commonality, some common threads. Those two main challenges end up being navigating small talk and replying or responding to our matches. And so for daters with ADHD, these become the two areas that we really wanted to focus in the most. If I were to lay out what's happening, those are the two biggest things that we found out from daters with ADHD that's really impacting their ability to connect with people.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I hear that from a friendship perspective where people find it hard to keep up with friendships, where, people are communicating on WhatsApp groups and it's too overwhelming, but also that small talk for us, it's really exhausting. I would prefer to have a big, long, deep and meaningful, and I find that energizing and uplifting. But if I have to talk about what I've done at the weekend and where I get my nails done and where I'm going on holiday, I'm just like, I just can't deal with it. And I come back and I'm drained and I need to kind of like lie down in a dark room. So it just shows, doesn't it, that I think that's why many neurodivergent people are attracted to each other, because we kind of cut the bullshit, we go straight in, we want to have the deep conversations, we want to go there. And these potentially what may be deemed as socially awkward conversations, to us, we just say it as it is, where, in neurotypical environments, it can feel a little bit kind of like abrupt or abrasive or however you want to, deem it. So I guess what does Hinge do? Is there a specific way that Hinge works and helps neurodivergent daters?
Oh, that's a good question. I have a personal and professional connection to ADHD because as a therapist, I work with a lot of people over the years. But then in my personal life, I have a diagnosis of ADHD. So this is like all of what you said. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. At Hinge, we are really committed to people finding quality connections, creating love. And so we want people to ultimately meet on Hinge and then get off of the app. I think that the connection being our premise and being like at the center of what we do really is a part of the environment that I think all daters experience, and definitely daters with ADHD. So we released this report because we really care about what's happening for daters with ADHD. So if you're on Hinge, you're not familiar with Hinge, so I'll just like say, like for anybody on Hinge, I would suggest utilizing a number of features that can help your connection process a bit better. So starting with using prompts or other features that allow you to really highlight your interest on your profile. So whether you're putting that in your bio or you're using prompts or you're using voice prompts to like share your own voice and display what you're interested in, I think those often end up being ways in which your matches can start conversations with you already about the things that you're interested in. So you can kind of skip the small talk, but it still can be small talk adjacent where you're not going too deep, too quickly. I think for daters with ADHD, this is like really important because they're not just getting a like, they're also usually getting a conversation starter. And those conversation starters are much more likely to lead to dates.
Yeah, I like that. And I think after we've had a diagnosis or an awareness, and there are many people who have gone for decades and decades of their life of not knowing that they were neurodivergent, but struggled in relationships. And I've seen that generational pattern as well in their family, where they kind of just see divorce and chaos and different partners. And that's just kind of been like the norm. And then when they get the diagnosis, they can kind of go, oh, so that's kind of why like there's certain things with my ADHD or autism that I struggle with. I struggle with the social connection or being too honest or masking or not being able to kind of communicate my needs, all things like that. So I think it's really important that when we get that awareness, we can almost commit to dating like more authentically and unmasking and saying, like I want to feel safe and show people who I am and be okay with this is what helps me. These are accommodations, or this is the way I like to have my first date. Like interesting, I had a friend who she's been on lots of different dates. She's been single and all things like that. And I can't sit at a table, eye contact and having to talk to somebody. So I said to her, like, why don't you just go on a dog walk? Go on a dog walk, go during the day, go and have a coffee. You don't have to commit. And she just said the dog walk and the walking is actually a much easier way because they don't have to make eye contact. They're moving. It feels productive. And so it's just interesting, isn't it? That now, when you have that awareness, you can navigate your relationships and your dating life accordingly. I guess from your perspective as like a therapist, do you think that having that awareness can really revolutionize the way you take your dating life?
Oh, absolutely. I love what you just said. I think it's a prime example of, that awareness increasing authenticity. And I think even adding to awareness, I encourage daters to even be accountable for then their dating process. And so accountability looks like what you described is like kind of offering what works best for you and not just kind of leaving it to the other person to decide. And I think this often happens when we center daters with who don't have ADHD. They're pretty typical in the dating population. And so when they expect responses in 24 hours, like 70+ % of Hinge daters who desire their responses in 24 hours, then they're kind of setting the tone. But there's an opportunity for daters once you know you are experiencing ADHD symptoms to go ahead and say what works for you. So I love that example of kind of taking the reins and saying and being vocal about what you need in the dating space.
Yeah, I guess it might be perceived as rude if like there's kind of like a standard to if you've been on the apps before and someone messages you and then they don't respond for, so is that, I guess it's a social hierarchy or a system that if you find it hard to read what the different systems are and what is perceived as rude, or we don't feel the need to respond within 24 hours, or we forget, we get distracted. And then it would be so lovely to have a compassionate person who kind of says, oh, okay, they've got ADHD. So even though I don't have it, I can kind of get why they may have got distracted, and that's why they didn't respond. What is interesting is if more people understood things like RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, and how much that impacts dating, I presume. And also that feeling, I mean, I can't even imagine, but and again, forgive me if I don't quite know the literacy with Hinge, but if I don't know if it's swiping or not swiping, but if you kind of see someone that you like and then they don't reciprocate, that can feel like a bit of a dagger in the heart. How do you navigate that with RSD?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. I think at Hinge, we really are prioritizing quality over quantity and really encouraging daters to really focus in on, I would say, especially daters experiencing any kind of ADHD symptoms, like to focus in on quality matches, quality connections, people that share your interests instead of focusing on a lot of people at once. I think that that's overwhelming when you have too many messages on any app, your email, whatever, is just too much. It can be overwhelming. I think for daters with ADHD, we're more likely to turn off our phones, to stop getting that incoming contact, and then we might not end up responding to our messages and things. And so for daters experiencing any kind of rejection, sensitivity, I think it's important to take your time, be compassionate with yourself. This rejection I would say if you're experiencing rejection sensitivity, I as a therapist want to normalize it. Like that's going to happen as you're putting yourself out there. The dating process is so vulnerable. It is like you showing your best self and putting your best foot forward. And so I think that some of that is a lot of this process is necessary. And though the rejection sensitivity is also a real painful experience that can kind of hijack the beauty of that process as well. And so it's important to kind of check in with yourself regularly as you make connections and notice for yourself when those check-ins need to happen. For some people, they need to happen after dates. So after you go on a date with someone, checking in with yourself about how you're feeling, or checking in after if the date doesn't go well, or if you don't want to continue matching, checking in after that. But for other people, the check-ins might need to happen if you've tried to match with several people and you haven't gotten any matches. That can be the moment to check in. So I'd say knowing yourself is really important in that process. And then I am a big supporter of like affirmations and having like a toolkit, like a little backpack, if you
Yeah, me
will.
too.
And so in my backpack, it's like a lot of affirmations and reminders to myself that I am loved, that I am worthy of love, that love easily comes to me, that I easily attract love, that I easily put out love. And so those are what my affirmations look like. And I just encourage daters to have their own toolkit of like self-love and self-encouragement in that process. But RSD is a real thing. And so if you're also experiencing those symptoms, talk to a therapist about those symptoms as well as you navigate the dating process, because there is a lot of rejection inherent with that process.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm also a big fan of having the affirmations and also recognizing the triggers of when we're looking for that external validation. Hi, it's just me, Kate, interrupting today's episode to let you know that if you join my email subscriber list, you'll be the first to know about any upcoming group programs and workshops that I am planning. And I do have an amazing group program planning at the moment. I'll be launching it very soon, and it's for 10 people who are ready to come on a 12-week immersive journey with me to help move through to the next chapter after you've had your ADHD, whether it's a diagnosis or this awareness, and you are ready to take really positive steps towards creating a healthier and more fulfilled life. So I'm really excited about that. If you join my email list, you will hear all about it. Be the first people before I launch it onto social media. And you'll also be able to understand a little bit more of what I do. And I have lots of free resources on my website as well. So if you head to ADHDwomenswellbeing.co.uk, you can have a glance through all the free resources, but also the on-demand workshops that you can download and watch straight away, whether it's about your nervous system, you want to learn more about that and how to calm and regulate and ground yourself. And also my 2-part Reclaim Your Calm, which has recently just been recorded and had lots of really good testimonials from it, where you can learn how to integrate EFT tapping into your life to help you with your ADHD traits and symptoms. I'm really proud of these on-demand resources, and I know they've helped lots and lots of people. So if you head to my website, it's ADHDwomenswellbeing.co.uk. You'll get all the information there. And don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter so you can be the first to hear about any of my new offerings. Now back to today's episode. What I wanted to also ask is, again, we have with ADHD, and I don't want to generalize too much, but this sort of novelty seeking, we can get bored easily, and without using the dreaded word, the ick. But I always, I also see this happen where, if I'm using this term correctly, because again, I'm like in my 40s, but when people love bomb and they have this sort of novelty and everything's amazing, and all of a sudden just something happens, and it could just be they said something in the wrong way, or they saw a picture and all of a sudden they got this ick, and then the novelty's gone. They want to shut the whole thing down. It can be related to this kind of like all or nothing thinking, where I see it happen with business and career and friendships, that we get totally all involved, all consumed, and then we could just wake up that next day and go, not feeling it anymore, I'm done. And there's a lot of, sometimes it can be self-sabotage, and sometimes it can be like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just be on this more even keel? And we kind of live life a bit more of in a roller coaster until, and I feel from a personal perspective, this is what happens until we just find that sweet spot that really works for us. And I'll use, say, a career as an example, that we could work in the corporate, in a corporate field for years and years and years, and we feel burnt out, exhausted and drained. It's kind of a bit like a toxic relationship. We kind of get rewards from it, but actually the benefits are just not there anymore. And then we say we become an entrepreneur, we work for ourselves, we work for a more like holistic, smaller boutique agency, whatever that might be. And all of a sudden we kind of blossom again, and we kind of get our environment. We're working within what all the modalities, I guess, that are helping us thrive. Mm-hmm. Do you see this happening a lot with the neurodivergent dating world, where it is a bit kind of up and down, and, you know, this sort of contrast of we're all in, and then actually I'm done, I'm out?
Yeah, many daters with ADHD desire like diversity,
Excitement.
novelty,
Yeah.
excitement for certain. It's like once things become a little bit more routine or
Mm.
boring, it can be harder to keep engaging. And for some people, this happens quicker
Yeah.
than others. And so I guess my advice would be to, and I love the example of your friend from earlier, because I think this is something you can do throughout the dating process, is to infuse excitement back into the process. So even if you're with the same person or you've been seeing them maybe like 4 to 5 dates, and you wake up one morning and you're like, "Ah, this is boring. I don't want this anymore." Really check in with yourself around your boundaries. Have you asserted all the necessary boundaries? Is there some part of your communication that does not work for you? So I encourage daters to um, switch from texting to talking, or something that's a little bit more animated, interesting. So if there might be things that you need to switch up that are causing that feeling that you're having, so continuing to check in with that, I think, will help figure out if you're just done with the relationship or if there is some monotony happening.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful, isn't it, when you have that self-understanding of,
Mm,
like, is it a novelty thing? And do we need to switch things up if, like, we've done 3 dates with the same person? It's each one has been
yeah.
going for a drink or, going for a
Right.
meal, and actually going to
Right.
do something fun or active or creative, or go to a concert, or I don't know, do something that's just totally different. Because even when you've been in a relationship for as long as I have, sometimes it can be like, oh, I don't want to go out for another meal. Let's go for a swim. You have to constantly
Yeah.
seek that novelty when you do have ADHD,
Yeah.
because you kind of know what happens on the flip side, where we can just
Mhm.
maybe just throw a match and want to burn it all down, when we know
Yeah.
even though that person could be really good for us.
Yeah.
And also recognizing that that person who potentially you might be getting a little bit bored with, or the novelty's going because the mundanity of life's coming in with
Yeah.
ADHD. And again, I'm generalizing, perhaps speaking from my perspective, we kind of need a bit of a solid foundation. So we might need a partner that might not be exactly the same as us, because if we're prone to kind of spontaneity and flightiness and impulsivity, to have two people like that is a bit chaotic. But if we kind of seek someone who complements that side and doesn't criticize it or denounce it or ridicule or invalidate all those different things, but kind of like hold that space for us, so we can be the one that is like, oh, well, let's go and do something fun today, and forget all our chores. And then he would be like, that's really fine. Well, they would be like that. And they could just be, but we need to get home because there is stuff that needs sorting in the house as well. And that, I think sometimes we need to understand that even though it might not be the most exciting option, to have a little bit of difference where we complement each other. And then that other person who might be more kind of routine led or structure led might need someone like us who can kind of, be like, let's do something different. Let's try something new. Let's break away from the routine. And I actually spoke to a journalist about this a few weeks ago. They were writing an article about neurodivergent dating and how ADHD and autistic partners tend to find each other. It's not uncommon for one to be ADHD, one to be autistic, or the neurodivergent sort of spectrum to be kind of slightly different on each side.
Wow. Very
It was
interesting.
so interesting. And what we worked out was that we do complement each other. And as long as we have awareness there, it's when neither one of the partners understand their neurodivergence, and there's shame there, and there's guilt, and there's blame, and there's self-criticism. But when we understand it, and when we give it space and compassion and tenderness and all of that, we can hold space for each one. So we know when there's anxiety, or when there's worry or overwhelm, and my overwhelm might show up differently to my husband's overwhelm, and it's
Yeah.
it's like complementing. So I guess
Yeah.
it comes back to awareness and getting to know yourselves, maybe before you go on the dating apps, kind of maybe a bit of self-love and working on that, doing the inner work before we go on the apps to do the kind of the external validation. I'd love to hear. You're a therapist. I'm
Yeah, no,
not,
I
but
love what you just said. I think you gave a beautiful case for where I center a lot of my therapy work, which is a strength-based approach. And so when I think about strengths, I think about what you described, which is like knowing yourself, knowing your partner or the person you're dating, everybody kind of bringing their own things to the table, putting them out in the open, having conversations about them. And what you do well, you just keep doing. And what they do well, they keep doing, and we complement each other. I think, like you said, if we come to the table and we're not aware of our strengths, oftentimes we just focus in on the challenges. And so, what strength based approaches do to relationships, to therapy, to anywhere in the world, to work environments, they help us to collaborate better because everybody's bringing their best to the table, and we're taking the best of each person and we're putting it together to make something amazing. And so I really offer that to daters with ADHD, not seeing how you show up as a deficit, not seeing your challenges always as weaknesses or growing edges. Certainly, the parts that maybe make it harder for you to listen may feel challenging in the dating space, but then there are parts for many people with ADHD. We have this ability to focus on things that we're really interested in for a long time, and so that might make dates feel very seen and heard if we are just so into their conversation that
yeah,
we are not breaking eye contact for a long time.
yeah,
And so, whatever your strength is, really amplify that in the dating space. Be encouraged because you don't only have challenges, you do have strengths. And so, identifying them and really amplifying them can help you to know what you bring to the table that's also good. I am definitely a supporter of coming to the dating space, really knowing yourself, being self compassionate, being self loving. Um, and not only seeking that externally, really having that internally before you come to the dating space.
yeah, for sure. And I think, this generation, and I say this generation because it's maybe my generation, your generation, younger generation, is that we're probably the first, I would say maybe my generation, like 40s, 50s, who are understanding the neurodivergent patterns in their family. They're
Mm,
understanding this awareness. So if they're getting a diagnosis later on in life, they can then look back and kind of go, I can kind of understand why my parents split up. I can understand where there was dysfunction,
mm,
there's chaos, there was several, different relationships, different partners in and out the house, all of that. They can start connecting connecting those dots and recognizing and using that, unfortunately, the pain, but also as for like productive power and to kind of say, I don't want to do that. I don't want my relationship to be like my parents' relationship, or I don't want my kids to be brought up in a house the way I was brought up. And so we do have this responsibility to do the work because we have this awareness, which is amazing, but we have to do that work and kind of say, right, well, this is an amazing strength that I have with my ADHD, but I also have these challenges where
yeah.
I can go from 0 to 100 in like emotional dysregulation, or I can misconstrue a situation because of RSD, or I'm going to speak from a female perspective, like from a hormonal perspective, we can suffer from PMDD, we can suffer from, really difficult hormonal imbalances, and that can sabotage relationships. Early perimenopause, we know this is much more common now in neurodivergent women. So we are understanding the role that hormones play and maybe how
Mm,
that can derail relationships, not from like blaming a woman's hormones, but also having this understanding that, yes, for a week of the month or maybe longer, I am going to be more sensitive. I am going to be more depleted. My mood is going to be much lower. And to be able to have that open and honest conversation with a partner and say, we need to work together on this, like how instead of maybe 30 or 40 years ago, women were deemed kind of hysterical or neurotic or out of control, or, she's having a nervous breakdown, like all these terrible stereotypical ways that women would be deemed. And then obviously, I'm talking about kind of very traditional relationships here, but this is why you can see certain breakdowns of partnerships. So yeah, I think it's fascinating to be able to dissect this, because
Yeah.
we are in this moment in history where there's more understanding. Societal
Mm.
conditioning is kind of dismantling a little bit. We're able to recognize this patriarchal system that we've been part of. And we can make choices, like informed choices, where I guess maybe our parents and our grandparents weren't able to make these informed choices.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, what you just said is powerful because it does speak to self-empowerment, the ability to know what's happening for yourself and your relationship, and then that giving you the power to change something. And so I love that you highlighted the the strengths, but also the challenges that we have to be accountable for so that we can change our history, essentially, so that the same patterns that we saw growing up or in relationships around us growing up don't have to wreak havoc on our own relationships. So this really gets back to this, coming to the dating space, knowing what you're working with. And it's like you might not know everything. You might, because I think so much of dating is really understanding yourself better. It's definitely a space for exploration. But some part of this is really coming to the table with that self compassion, that self awareness, the self accountability to really kind of roll up your sleeves and do the work of relationships.
mhm,
You have really talked plenty, I think, in this episode about what it means to be in a long-term relationship. You said 20 something years, and everything you've said has been a testament to the work that has to happen in order for you to stay in that relationship, or the shifts that have to occur. It's the evolutions, the growth, the change. And so when we think about dating, it's just kind of like the beginning of all of that. And, everybody has a different outcome that they're looking for when it comes to dating, but connection really is at the core of it. And so our diagnoses don't have to prevent us from having quality connections. And so I want anybody who walks away from this episode to really understand that your diagnosis of ADHD is like one part of who you are. We've talked so much in this episode already about intersectional identities and how they add to the tapestry of your identity. And so really see ADHD as like one aspect of your identity. I don't want you to walk away thinking, oh, I'm never going to be able to find love,
yeah.
because it's not true. You can totally create the love that you're seeking, and ADHD actually does not have to get in the way of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And my last question is, do you have like a drop down or whatever you call it on Hinge, where you can say you're neurodivergent, it's just there, and you want to be,
Mm.
connected to other neurodivergent people?
Mm. So I would encourage people, if you want to put this on your profile, to definitely put this in your bio, or to fill out a prompt that feels like relevant. So maybe the prompt might be, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but something that allows you to be able to share with them information that you really want them to know. You can use a voice prompt to do this, however feels comfortable. But I would say if you want to display that on your profile, to just go ahead and put it in your bio or use a prompt.
Yeah, I mean, again, because I'm not doing this, but I would think that it would feel
Mm.
like an easy place to just disclose it, because you're not then having
Yeah.
to 2 or 3 dates down the line say, oh, I've got ADHD. I was speaking to someone the other day, and she was in her early 30s, and she said that her boyfriend had ADHD, and she didn't know that he had ADHD until like
Wow.
6 months later, when she found his medication. And he
Wow.
was embarrassed and he was ashamed. I
Oh.
know. And I just felt so sad for him that he kind of
Mm-hmm.
had to keep it a secret because of the stigma that's still there with ADHD. That there's still so much ignorance and miseducation and lack of knowledge, and it's just such outdated responses to ADHD, or I have it all the time. Oh, you don't look like you've got ADHD, or how can you have ADHD, and all of that. And I'm like, you know nothing, because they just think it only
Yeah.
looks specifically in like one thing. But I wonder if it would feel just easier just to disclose it and it's there. And if someone
Mhm.
doesn't want to date someone neurodivergent, that's fine. But at least it's there and it's open. I don't know what I would do. I mean, what would you suggest to people?
I suggest, as long as you feel comfortable, definitely sharing that up front. So whether it's in the first conversations, or on your profile, I'd say give context. The context is really important because I imagine that you're sharing it with a purpose. It's like you want people to know that your responses may take longer, or you want people to know that if you don't reply right away, that you're not ignoring them. And so maybe in those first couple of messages and say, hey, I'm only on Hinge once a day, and it's because I'm really trying to free my life of a lot of distractions because I have ADHD, and I'm really trying to manage the dating space in a way that really supports me. So don't take this as a lack of interest. That's like how I would share this with someone early on. But I definitely think that it's better, from my perspective, to support your matches in supporting you. And so it leads to less misunderstanding, less miscommunication. We actually found out in our report that 3 out of 4 Hinge daters with ADHD feel misunderstood by their matches because of these kinds of expectations that daters will respond within 24 hours and things like that. So there's this misunderstanding that's happening. To avoid that, I think having these conversations up front will help a lot.
Yeah, I love that. Is there a way that people can access the research that you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best way is probably to check out hinge.co. We have a page on the site where you can look at our most recent press releases, blog posts. And so the report would be one of those most recent press releases. I think that's the easiest way.
Okay.
Or you could do a quick Google search for
Or
Hinge
I'll put it
Love.
on the show notes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the show notes would be great.
Yeah, because I think people would be really interested to have a look at that research and really see what's going on and on the ground, because everyone's experience is different, but it's also quite validating to be able to kind of go, okay, so it's not just me, or it's not just me experiencing this or feeling this.
Right.
So I think
there are also daters featured in that report too. And so it would definitely be very validating to hear other people's experiences.
Yeah, for sure. And it just, creates that sense of community that we're not all alone and we're here together. And hopefully the more we talk and we have these conversations, that we are just normalizing this conversation, so people don't feel like it's only them experiencing this type of thing in the dating world. I've really loved this conversation, Mo. Thank you so much.
Too.
It's been really
Thank
interesting,
you.
a little insight into a bit of a world that I'm not really part of, but it's fascinating. And I think everyone deserves love and everyone deserves connection, and ADHD or not, we all deserve the love and compassion and understanding and care and all of that. So thank you so much. And I will make sure, tell people if they're interested, do you see people online, or you do private consultations?
Yeah, so I do have a private practice here in the States. It's called Transcendent Therapy. But if you want to connect with me on social media, connect with me at Love Out Proud. I'm Love Out Proud on Instagram and TikTok. And listen to my podcast, Be Your Own Love Goals podcast. It's a podcast I do with my wife weekly.
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to check that out. So that sounds
Awesome.
great. Thank you so much, Mo.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did and it resonated with you, I would absolutely love it if you could share on your platforms, or maybe leave a review and a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please do check out my website, adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk, for lots of free resources and paid for workshops. I'm uploading new things all the time, and I would absolutely love to see you there. Take care and see you for the next episode.